problem. That's a good start. Sorry, it's a bit echo here. I don't know what we can do about that, but I'm sure that'll sort itself out. So firstly, welcome to everybody. Thank you to Councillor Hastings as well for everything he's done before me taking this role on. I'm going to go through the minutes first. I'm then going to do a little bit of ground rule setting, if that's okay with everyone. And then I'm going to go quickly through timings on the agenda, because I want to keep these to 2 hours, these meetings. And then we'll crack on, because it's. I'm sure you're all quite keen to talk about the budget bit, maybe. I might be guessing. So approval of the minutes. Everyone happy for me to approve the minutes? Proposal? Seconder? Yeah, thank you. Any further apologies? I know Carl's apologised. Any others? No, that's a good start.
Yeah, sorry, just to indicate, I will need to leave by about 20 to 7.
27. So anything you want for Councillor Bacon, we need to do before 20 to 7. Probably about a minute to 20 to 7. See if you can leave on time. Declarations of interest noted. Any others to be added? Excellent.
Because there might be reference or regarding young people, I am a trustee of the Isle of Wight Youth Trust. I'll just put that out there.
Any others? Chris, Councillor Jarman?
Yes, I should declare that my father is a beneficiary of the Wight Care system, one of those most excellent quality systems delivered by the Isle of Wight Council.
As you said, that Paul's alarm went off. I wondered if perhaps he was a recipient. Thank you for that. Karen?
If we talk about social care today, I work for the PA service.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Last chance. No, excellent, thank you. So really, Scrutiny has got a real chance to make some difference, and I think it's part of the ground rules I like to set is that we all agree that we're here to make a positive impact, and we've got to work across party and across group for this. There can't be any political alliances within this forum because it won't work. We need to challenge underperformance, and I will encourage challenge of underperformance at every opportunity. That is my job as chair, I believe. We want to seek out good practice where it occurs and promote it, and focus on outcomes rather than just the discussion. To that mind, this isn't a rerun of full council. So if you want to play political games or a grandstand, save that for full council and I'll let Jeff deal with you, because he'll do that very well. And it's not going to become a part of the political broadcast for any group, including me as a group of one. That's not what we're here for. The one that I will be quite strict on, and that's the only time I use the gavel, is if you're not adding, please stop, because there's a lot to get through. So if you've got a really good question, great. If you're making a statement, again, save it for full council, and keep your questions short and meaningful. I want to keep this to 2 hours. So when it comes to the cabinet questions, I think it's really important we allow the cabinet member responsible to answer the questions and avoid every cabinet member getting involved. And I appreciate you want to support each other, but I think it's important that we give a chance to the cabinet member involved. So other than that, what I'd like to say is make sure you enjoy it, because that's part of the process. Okay, I don't believe we've got any public questions, have we, Paul?
None, Chairman.
Okay. Progress update, you're all aware of the progress update. Any member questions or questions anywhere else on the update? No, noted. So, I was going to do the timings, wasn't I? So I'd like to go to the new council website. I'm going to allow 10 minutes. Hopefully we can get through that. Budget I've allowed 35. It may go a little bit over, but we should save some time elsewhere. Items due to be considered by the Cabinet, because these should be by exception largely. So I think we should get through that in 5. Same for forward plan and the work plan, and then the rest of the time for members' questions, and that should keep us to about 2 hours. However, if we are having something particularly interesting and exciting that needs discussing, I'm not going to storm out at 7 o'clock. So, Claire, I believe, new council website.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just check everybody can hear me okay? Super, thank you. Conscious that I'm very capable of talking for more than 10 minutes on a subject that's of interest, obviously, to me and many others. So I will keep it brief. Scrutiny Committee, you asked a number of questions, which I have provided some responses for you, which I believe everybody has been circulated a copy of. and I'd be happy to answer any further queries or comments in relation to that narrative. I wonder if I may, just to reinforce the complexity of the website project for a local authority, or the development of a new website project for a local authority, particularly as a result of what we know had been a period of underinvestment in our current ICT infrastructure, which has meant that there has been a lot of technical rebuild and coding that's a necessity to get us to a point where we can deliver a modern and accessible website. And that in itself has been a massive piece of work, which in order to get the key aspect of that accessibility around mobile functionality has meant we've had to build from scratch a number of key modules that support the development of the website itself. So, for example, the content management system that drives it, the My Account facility, the forms that drive the transactions on the website, and indeed, a variety of other things that underpin the delivery. And that aside, also just a very quick reminder that we do have some 2,000 individual website pages, which have all, by necessity, need to be reviewed and revised in light of what the customer journey is now, and to make that as accessible and as clear as we can. So it has been a major rewrite. And we've also got some 20,000 documents in our document library. 1,300 of those will need to be brought up to an accessible standard for the first phase of this new website. So I just wanted to reinforce the kind of the importance and complexity of the project. And perhaps just to remind committee members around some of the principles that we are working from in the development of this new piece of work. So fundamental to it is that we need it to be accessible for from any device, that we know people want to have access to a good search facility. We know that people want to be able to easily navigate around the system. And we know that we need to take account of the customer journey, not what we want to tell people, so that they can find what they need, excuse me, what they need in a much speedier way than they currently can. And perhaps more importantly, we have some legislative responsibilities under the accessibility standards, which means that we need to make sure that it's able to be accessed by anyone who needs to. So in the first tranche of this project, what we will be launching is a beta site, which is a fairly standard way to approach things in the digital world now. Which will mean that it's something that will be launched and still not finished. And I say that in a way that, in a sense, it is finished, but it provides the opportunity for people to feed back how well and how easy they are able to use that site to enable us to develop it further in light of that feedback. So it is truly customer focused. And because of the extent of the technical build, we will also be delivering what we describe as a minimum viable product, so that we actually are able to get a system that's live and usable, but upon which we will develop further in the remaining phase of the project. So in terms of that, leads me nicely to the progress in terms of where we've got to thus far. We have a target, as you know, for the beta site for the first 6 service areas that have been reviewed by the 31st of March, and we're still on track to do that. So we have our new content management system built, that's been tested, and all the content for those service areas has been input onto that system, and that's with services at this moment in time to review and test. To make sure it's as up to date and as accurate as we can get it. We're also in the process of reviewing those essential documents that we need for go live in those areas, make sure that they're accessible, and everything else thus far in terms of that kind of technical build is on track. So at the beginning of March, we will be very much working towards sharing and helping people to understand what they're going to be able to see post 31st of March. And I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention that we need to be alert to the fact that the existing website will still be there. And you will navigate your way through to the new pages through that existing website. But it will be a seamless, easy journey that just literally enables you to click through to those service areas. Once the technical build has been completed, I think we will be able to see a much quicker and faster transition of the remaining service areas. So as soon as the service area has been reviewed, that will go live on the beta site and people will be able to link directly through to it. So I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that that's the route, but obviously we'll talk people through that. So I hope that's a level of reassurance that we're still on track and we will be delivering by the 31st of March.
Thank you, Claire. Questions? Karen, Councillor Luciani, and then Councillor Lilly.
I just wanted to talk about an experience of a resident of mine who needed to fill out a form online because she had an iPad. It kept dropping out all the time, and so that caused having to use somebody in the office or at home, in this case, to fill out the form for her. Will that be fixed in future? Because obviously that's adding to the workload of staff, and as we know, we're 1,000 staff down since 2010. So, yeah, can we get that fixed?
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the design, that it will be accessible from your tablet, mobile. You'll be able to make it whatever size you want.
Councillor Lilly.
Claire, thank you for that presentation. There's always risks in these things. So what are the top 5 risks in developing and launching the website? Where are the areas that you worry about at night? Because this is an opportunity to share this with you.
Well, you're putting me on the spot there, but I think there's a multitude of things, and the project does have a risk register which we monitor on a weekly basis. Some of the key risks for me are around the potential for well, we know that working in a current digital world, that cyber security is one of our major concerns, and it only takes some sort of threat or work that needs to be done to take resource away to deal with immediate priorities. That's something that we're aware of. It's something we deal with on a day-to-day basis, but you have to manage the resources as best you can. I think the other key area, and like anything, you are dependent on the staffing resources that you have available to you within the project to deliver the things that you need to do. And I have every confidence that we've got some very skilled and knowledgeable officers that are working on that project, and they are dedicated to the project. But we know that particularly in the digital content, particularly on software development, they are expertise that are in short supply, and we are running short of those expertise, irrespective of whether we get it from somewhere else or not. So there are some workload pressures for the teams. I think we are very lucky in that those teams are very dedicated to making sure that we deliver this project. And again, it comes down to making sure that we manage people's workloads effectively and understand what our priorities are for delivery.
Thank you, Claire. Any further questions? Councillor Medland.
Claire, you mentioned that the 31st of March for the first 6 areas. Is there a subsequent date for, is it like an ongoing process, or is there a project completion date?
Thank you. I think the project is something that, you know, website is a never-ending project, I have to say, because there's always things that you need to improve. But in answer to your question, we have a final phase that we will be entering into post-April. So we will see the conclusion and the improvements that we know will need to be made to the beta site within the next 12 months. So from April, we would anticipate that by the end of that period of that financial year, that we will be to a point of it concluded. Yeah, and we'll be transferring to business as usual.
Thank you. Any further questions? Oh, is it Councillor Luciani?
I'd like to know if we can have a look and test the website at all.
You can't at this particular moment in time, but we are certainly planning that once we are working to the 18th of March to have everything ready to allow us some time to see if we can break it before it goes live. We will certainly be planning to invite certainly all councillors to a session prior to the launch, where you will have the opportunity to see, visualise, test and play.
I can hardly wait. Any further questions? Councillor Lilly.
Is it possible, Chair, that we could put on the work plan a date which is fair to Claire and her team to review the website? Because this is really, really important. This is our window, and it's a way of improving. It improves the services. If the window is good, then that actually helps the engagement with the council and so on lots of things. So I do think we need to sort of track it and have an opportunity to bring this back and look at it, especially after it's going live, perhaps in the autumn or isn't that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Are you happy with that, Councillor Quirk? Bringing it back for review. Excellent. Thank you very much. You're going to be happy with that. I know you are. I think all I would say is foresight of anything that's likely to go wrong is, lots of, I think, forewarning to this committee, really, just in terms of what is likely, if anything is likely to go wrong, because IT isn't straightforward. And I'd rather we found out the pitfalls rather than trying to cover them over with damp wallpaper. Thank you for that. Okay, moving on to budget proposals. Now, I'm going to assume everyone's read the budget and not ask anyone to give a presentation, because I don't think we've got all that the excitement to come at Budget Council, full 4 hours of it. I'm getting jammy dodgers in. Hopefully Darryl will bring his mints. So what I'd like to do is encourage questions from the very beginning. Now, what we'll say to the Alliance administration is you would want to encourage as many questions as you can at this stage. That's the only advice I would give you. And I think it makes sense. Councillor Cook, I know you did send a list of questions in that were just slightly late. However, I think it's only right. There's a couple of very pressing questions on there. I think it's right that you have the chance to ask those now. And after that, I'll open it to the floor. Councillor Cook.
Which is the Wight Care savings. I can understand that this is sort of keeping up with other places, but one feels that there could be an impact if the price that is being charged leads to people not using the service, and then there's a roll-on effect onto other areas of adult social care, because you then pick people up at a later stage because they've been lying in their kitchen for the last 24 hours. Has that been taken into account? Are there any calculations on that? What is the, if we can just have a bit of background on to explain why this is a sensible saving or increasing revenue.
Who would like to Councillor Jarman.
Yes, thank you. And I should say I'm obliged to Laura for assisting me with further details on this topic today. We have been collating them recently and have been providing them out to address other questions on a similar nature that have come in, including one, I believe, on the written paper and Q&A that we've got. On the service as it stands at the moment, we're running at an annual deficit of about £380,000. For many years, the council has also been subsidising the capital components of the service by about 100,000 a year. And that doesn't include all the costs. There are others related to the fleet management, which are in addition to that. So it has been running at a sustained and increasing deficit for quite some time. If we were to try and catch up on that all in one go, clearly the impact would be quite dramatic and we believe detrimental. So what we're doing is phasing the return to some basis of fiscal responsibility and normality by small incremental increases in those charges, which will have to be gradually introduced over a number of years. The increases that we're looking at are quite modest compared with the deficit that we are running. And of course, there is the potential for some people to opt out of the scheme. However, it is, as I know from personal experience, and I know other councillors do as well, a very valuable service and in great demand. And I think as we are able, and as this administration is committed to build on and improve that service, I can only foresee it becoming more wanted within the community rather than less. I think the ageing of the community and our determination to treat people at home will accelerate its use. And I think the service has all opportunity to continue to grow and be vital in the future. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Laura.
I think we're good. Thank you, Councillor Jarman. Through you, Chairman, the impact of any funding change or a change in arrangements for people obviously has an impact on the person themselves, and I'm conscious that that impact isn't one that we should ignore. Wherever an increase in fees is proposed, there's a detailed piece of work that goes on behind that to ensure that we're able to support people with financial hardship, should that be the situation, but also in terms of how we calculate any mandatory contributions towards their care and support. So from a purely practical point of view and focusing on the people who ultimately will receive this increase if the proposal is successful, where a person funds their own care and they're subject to or want an assessment from adult social care, the process enables us to make a full allowance for any contribution they make towards a Wight care service. So in essence, that assessment will increase as a financial contribution increases. Where there's an obligation on the local authority to contribute towards a person's care and support, similarly, that sum is offset from their personal budget. So from a purely financial point of view, we'll do what we can to support people to ensure that the increase doesn't negatively impact. This increase is one, as you rightly outlined, that will impact on people, but we've sought to minimise that through the way in which it will be implemented. And it will be implemented through our review processes, ensuring that people and their families are fully engaged in those discussions to make sure that it is affordable. As part of our calculations, whenever we look at services, we look at a retention rate, assuming that people may make a choice to go and seek these services in a different way from a different provider. And the calculations before you are calculated on an 80% retention rate. So that's 80% of people choosing to continue with the services and potentially 20% of people choosing not to. So in relation to your very specific questions, yes, this has been risk assessed, but that risk assessment will continue with the people who access this service on a one-to-one basis to ensure that they're fully supported and continue to receive the services that they need.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Quirk?
And the second question is on the capital budget. There's £2.5 million there for the council-owned housing company. My belief, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the company actually has no real structure to it as yet. And so I suspect that there's an amount of money in there for the actual genuinely setting up of the company as something that can work, and some money in there as sort of pump priming funding. Can we know how that splits, if it splits?
Who would like to take that one? Chris Ashman. Oh, can somebody pass the microphone to Chris or Karen? If you don't. Oh no, different Chris. Oh, you can both do it.
I'll go first, Chair, if that's okay. Thank you. It's two Chris's. The truth of it is there's no actual split, and I think the rationale for that is this is really about trying to give the housing company the best possible start. So there will be a requirement for startup funds in order to get the company set up, properly constituted in all of its different group structure. There are serious considerations about tax efficiency. There are considerations about developing business case and business plan, which is a legal requirement before company can start trading. All of the governance documents that will need to exist, both between the company and the council itself, so that there's a clear decision-making protocol between the two entities. And then there'll also be a loan facility arrangement that will be required between the council and the company as well, because in effect, the company would have to borrow funds from the council and then repay those funds to the council. The company itself obviously is a separate legal entity, and it's constituted under the Companies Act 2006, which means that it is operating effectively would operate at arm's length from the council. So there's obviously a degree of cost and complexity associated with that would need to be funded in the first instance. The cost of that at this stage hasn't been quantified. But then you want the company itself to be able to do the development. I think, as we know, that there may be challenges around development on the island, and there may be potential development sites that may have compromised viability. So the remainder of the funding is there in order to be able to provide some level of public subsidy in the event that a particular development might need it. That's what it is in a nutshell, but the overall quantum is the quantum that the council could afford to put towards a new housing company in order to try to give it the best possible start.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cook?
Thank you.
One question I would add to that before I come to Chris Ashman is how much of that would be recoverable if nothing happened to that entity in a year's time?
Well, all of the, if in a year's, it depends obviously in terms of the development that's taken place, but all of the costs associated with company setup would be irrecoverable. They'd be sunk. Those costs tend to be on legal, finance, some property expertise as well in terms of developing the business case and some consultancy work. So that would be unrecoverable. And any additional cost that was provided as subsidy, for example, for a particular development, obviously the council would have purchased some form of interest in any development, and it would be whatever that could then be sold for. So there would be a level of recovery you would expect. But as part of all of the documentation that I talk about, particularly on a development by development basis, there'll be a number of agreements between council and company that seek to secure the council's interest. So there'll be lots of things that secure interest on the property that's owned by the company and so forth. So ultimately, anything that's purchased that becomes an asset would have a recoverable value to it.
And I'm assuming that you will have a breakdown of sorts somewhere of what you see the £2.5 million being spent on, because my suggestion would be that probably makes its way to full council. If you have got a breakdown, I think that would make people feel a lot happier. Chris Ashman, did you want to add anything?
£2.5 million is going to be bigger, and based on our experience and understanding, it seems to be. So
it can't be heard. Sorry, through the chair and for people on the call.
It's an indicative figure, Chair, and clearly it's based upon our understanding of the risks associated with some of our existing schemes, and particularly in the housing market. So it's indicative, and obviously we can provide the breakdown as and when the individual business plan for the housing company comes forward.
Thank you. You happy, Chris? Yes, Chris Ward.
Thanks. I mean, this is getting into a little bit of detail, really, but it's probably worth understanding that constitutionally, the shareholder of the company will be the cabinet. So it will be the cabinet that takes decisions in terms of approving the business case, the business plan, and then the funding, i.e. the loan that's provided to the company for any particular development. So constitutionally, it will be the cabinet that makes all of the decisions. The decision for council is to set the overall quantum of available resources that would be available, which is what the budget proposal does in terms of the 2.5 million in terms of company setup and seed capital, and the 25 million of borrowing capacity for the council to be able to advance loans to the company.
Thank you, Chris. Any further questions around the budget? We can't be going with one question, surely. Councillor Paley, can we?
Thank you. Firstly, if I may, Chair, I'd just like to thank Councillor Jarman for the efforts made to consult with Wight and other town and parish councils on the budget. The first question is on paragraph 36, refers to the £40,000 allocated to facilitate support for and work with town and parish councillors. Could you please let us know what is envisaged here for this, and then I'll follow up with more if that's okay.
Certainly, who wants to take that one? Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Cameron. What is envisaged, I can't tell you precisely. There are concerns that towns and parishes are not receiving sufficient support in relation to maintaining the public realm. We've seen a number of issues in the press recently, particularly about those smaller parish councils in rural areas who can't afford services like their own environment officer and so on, and they seem to suffer as a result, plain and simple. It will be a matter of working with the towns and parishes to work out how to use this money, but the aim is to provide that sort of support that is lacking. That doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to rural areas. It has to be fairly done across the board, but I think we have to be quite clever how to do it fairly so that those areas that need support get it, and those who don't need it so much don't get an undue benefit that could be taken away from other places.
Thank you. My next question is paragraph 42. Sorry. IWAC welcomes the plans to improve enforcement. Would like to know more about the proposed pilot project and whether this could be extended to other councils other than just Newport and Carisbrooke community councils in regards to planning enforcement.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you very much for the question, Cameron. Yes, it's something that is a priority for the Isle of Wight Council. I think for years now we've heard from town and parish councils about the lack of enforceability, and we've been trying to create a model where we can work with town and parish councils. We've been talking to some in recent months, and one of the ones we've been talking to is Newport Community Council about enhancing the enforcement team within the Isle of Wight Council to be able to support those issues that are important for local people. In the last week or so, I've been talking to residents in Haven Street, where they are having issues with people sort of like living in sort of like residential use outside. Now, under the normal circumstances, we might not have the resources to be able to do the work that is necessary, but by working with town and parish councils, we can actually dig in, we can get under the skin and find out what is important to local town and parish councils. And hopefully, by working with the parishes and funding a more robust enforcement team, we'd be able to deal more proactively dealing with some of the issues that are going on in across the island. So that is the whole thinking behind reinforcing the enforcement team. You know, it's proactive working, which we would like to see.
Answer your question, Cameron.
Yeah, and the final question is that recently we've seen several serious accidents across the island, including the Fairway and Lake and recently on Whippingham Road in East Cowes. In the previous budget, there was money allocated to purchase speed cameras, but the Alliance administration has chosen not to go down this route. Could Councillor Jordan please reassure all town and parish councils that in fact the administration do take road safety seriously and make us aware of what your plans are to address this? Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Of course, I'm happy to confirm and to all our town and parish councils and our residents and all our councillors that we are entirely committed to making our highways as safe as they can be. Absolutely entirely committed to that. In terms of the speed cameras, well, I don't know, this is probably the 5th or 6th time I'm going to say this, so please give me some indulgence, but the average mobile speed cameras do not exist and have not been approved. This is the 6th time I've said that. The money was set aside to buy something that we couldn't buy, so we didn't buy it. So what did we do? Well, we set it aside for wider speed reduction schemes, and that's being carried out. The previous administration started this process off with a speed review. We're in the middle of the speed review. The data is being collected. That will inform towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, priority schemes based on safety from the data that's being collated. And at that point, those priority schemes or schemes of priority on safety will be assessed. There'll be consultation, I'm absolutely confident of that, and considered within the funding that we have to deliver these schemes. So the money that was set aside for the cameras is set aside for the wider schemes across the island. We're also very supportive, of course, of the community cameras that are being used in certain places. We're very supportive of that. Residents in town and parishes are using them. They're quite useful. I guess the last thing to say really is that, of course, in general terms, it's the safety speed partnerships delivered via the police that operate cameras. It's not really, speed cameras are not really what councils do, but there we are. We're committed, Cameron, absolutely committed to it. It's a little while, it's going to take a while. This is not, it's not a quick fix, this, and our funding has got to meet the expectations, which it probably won't. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Cameron? Okay. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Could I return to the proposed increase in charges for the Wight Care service? I still don't understand how it's consistent with supporting people living at home. Could I have some more explanation around that? If you increase a cost to a service to support people living at home, that's going to encourage people to do other things if there's a pinch point in affordability. And of course, living at home should be a priority. It is a priority.
Who wants to take that one? Laura?
I can hopefully provide a little bit further clarity in relation to that. Absolutely, any cost associated with living at home is one that pinches on a purse of a person or their family who are supporting them. It's considerably cheaper and more cost effective than living in supported living, residential care or nursing care. What we need to do is make sure that we're utilising our very scarce adult social care funds to discharge our statutory duties, and the subsidy of a service such as Wight Care, whilst incredibly valuable to us and to the community, does impact on our ability to discharge some of those statutory functions. As our budget becomes tighter, we need to become ever increasingly aware of where we're spending the very limited funds that we have. And for a service that people can purchase from other providers, it feels like a worthwhile decision to see whether we can reduce the level of subsidy that we make and better support our statutory duties.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Wilson? Thank you. I must admit, I do have a concern when you say you expected a 20% drop off, because I'm guessing we're currently below market rate compared to other providers. And that is a concern I share with people that raise it, that it does push certain people into a lower level of affordability. However, I'm guessing that you've already taken that into account. We'll see that, but I think those are genuine concerns. Thank you for those. Anything else budgetary? Councillor Drew, welcome aboard.
Thank you. On the Wight Care point, I think clearly it has an excellent reputation. I know that when my own late mother, I was looking after her, it was an absolute lifeline. You talk of the deficit. I wonder to what extent we could potentially build out that deficit, looking at commercial options, finding other ways of using the brand. I think many islanders who have recourse to private carers would welcome the opportunity of bringing Wight Care further into their homes, and if we're able to do that as a way of ameliorating the deficit, that would be positive.
Laura?
I'm bouncing up and down with joy at hearing that comment, because Wight Care really is the jewel in adult social care's crown. The services they deliver are so valuable to our community that it's something that we are looking at expanding in the future, considering commercial options, but all of that takes time. At the moment, the ever-pinching budget is our more pressing concern. For a point of clarification, just in terms of the Chairman's earlier comments, our modelling is based around an 80% retention of the service. Our assumption is closer to 95.
Oh, my mistake. Thank you for clarification. That's your question, Councillor. Any further questions regarding the budget? Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. My question really is a general one, the overall budget, which is very much triggered to the announcement of the Levelling Up Fund, I think it was yesterday. In previous years, and I've been a councillor for a number of years, when we come to budget, the island deal has been seen as the rainbow. That we were going to always have this island deal, which was based on a £6 million deficit, which came from Portsmouth University. It's probably much higher now. We know it's much higher, but it was this fact that that piece of water is expensive, and as islanders, we do not have equality or parity with the mainland. So particularly some of our services like children's services, where we have to go, we pay a premium in that. So I'd just like to know what is the reaction and the analysis from our directors and our cabinet members on the fact that Mr. Gove was only going to give us £1 million, which was listed in the package of the Levelling Up, and obviously whether we can get a share of the other billions that are available in the Levelling Up. I know it's very short time, but this is quite crucial to the budget, because if there is more money, then that will help our existing budget. So that's my question to the cabinet members and to Mr. Ward.
To clarify, Councillor, you're asking, are we able to access any further money? Effectively, you're asking, can we access any further money? Are we
getting any kind of deal? You know, is the £1 million new money, or is it old? And are we going to get any share of the other monies for housing and a range of other things that are listed in the Levelling Up, which I'm sure you've read in The Guardian yesterday?
I'll never stop. Thank you for that. Who'd like to? Chris.
Well, thank you for the question. I have, yeah, thank you for the question. I'd like to start by saying we're still chasing that rainbow. So, and we've been chasing it for a long time. The £1 million, the the positive part of it's additional 1 million. So the positive part of that is that this is the first time we've had actual recognition that there is a unique cost associated with physical separation. So I think the recognition is important. What civil servants have said to me in relation to the 1 million is also that they would like to continue the dialogue with the Isle of Wight Council to substantiate the evidence base further. So they suggest that the door is open, and the point at which the island deal in terms of ongoing and sustained funding for councillors on an annual basis is to come through this mechanism called the Fair Funding Review, which has been, as we know, has been kicked down the road for at least a further year. We do know, however, though, that it's an important part of the government's agenda because they see it as part and parcel of the levelling up agenda. So I see this as a stopgap, and it enables us to continue the conversation with government over the next year to seek to demonstrate the case further for an even better deal through the Fair Funding Review. In relation to the other part of the question where you've talked about other levelling up funds, I think they're all going to be, forgive the expression, they're all going to be beauty contests. So they'll all be bid-based exercises apart from the funding that's already been announced. Unless, Chris, you want to say something else. I can see you frowning at me.
Thank you. Yeah, the levelling up white paper is very much a policy paper, and I think what was published at the same time was a much more interesting proposal called the Shared Prosperity Fund, and I think that allocation potentially will be on an authority basis. So the requirement, the indication in that guidance or that prospectus is for the need for an investment plan from any particular place, and for that to be a coherent plan. And obviously members will be aware of the efforts we put into the regeneration programme to date, the development of investment proposals. So we're starting potentially from a good place in terms of when the shared prosperity prospectus is published. We'll be able then to put forward a coherent programme to access that support.
Thank you, Chris and Chris. Any further questions in the 7 minutes we've got left? Sorry, Councillor Julie Jones-Evans.
Thank you. Yes, as you can imagine, there's a lot to go through for the levelling up policy. It's quite a hefty paper, and we are working our way through it, understanding what it means for us. The leader will be having something more to say this at Cabinet this week. And yes, as Mr. Ashton just said, the Shared Prosperity Fund will be very important for us, where we can look at our skills agenda as well and bringing that forward, as well as the investment profile portfolio we've already published in December 2020. So that obviously needs a refresh and aligning with what the government have just said. So we are working on it, as you can imagine, tirelessly to make sure the island's moving in the right direction, and continue, as Mr. Ward said, continuing to work alongside government and to understand our situation, which I think has been proven beyond doubt. So we just got to keep that open door, keep walking through it.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. Any further questions on matters of budget in the last 6 minutes? Oh, Councillor Bacon.
I can't resist commenting on this, I'm afraid. I think Chris Ward's description of it as a stopgap is very polite, really. I was leader of the council when the Portsmouth report that is often referred to was commissioned, and I think it is just galling to see what that report clearly set out to be ignored once again. We've had continual statements from central government, and they really are empty words. Councils across the country are being awarded sums to recognise increased costs. What has been continually recognised and identified is that the island is unique as an island. It has extra costs. Councillor Lilly referred to the effect of that stretch of water. I think that 4 miles is equivalent to about 75, 80 miles of road. I think we're not the most remote place in the country. I think that's technically Barrow-in-Furness, but we're second on the list. And that simply is not recognised in this award. And as I say, it's galling because we have that Portsmouth report, and not only do we have that, there are serious reports going back. I think the first one was 1962, and we're just seeing ourselves continually ignored in terms of recognition of that unique difference. It's nice to have a little bit of extra money, but it actually makes no difference to the underlying problem we have.
Okay. Any further, Councillor Jarman? Don't push me on time though, because if it's your statement, so I'm going to bang a gavel.
Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. I think to echo what Councillor Bacon said, I think we simply have to reflect on our profound disappointment at the illogical decision that's been made here. This is not made on a rational basis because we have provided copious rational evidence to secure the future of the island, and we are being ignored repeatedly. This token gesture is highly unsatisfactory and misguided, and it is to the detriment of the island as a whole and to every resident and business here that it fails to reflect the sustained, proven differential that we face.
Okay, thank you. I don't think anyone would disagree that we do need extra funding. I bet we'll keep Councillor Quirk.
I totally agree that we need the extra funding, and I think all sides of this room agree with that. But there's no way that a government is going to suddenly give you a big brown envelope full of money. It has to go through a sensible distribution mechanism, which is the new funding formula. And so I think it's to go on and to make political statements in this context of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee is actually inappropriate. It's not a party political thing. Even if whatever government you had would have to go through a formal process and actually make it deliverable in a way that is just open and transparent.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Quirk. Very quickly, Councillor Bacon, if it is going to be political, I will stop it, because I did say at the very beginning. So if it's got a point, I agree. If not, I will stop me, I'm afraid.
I was not seeking to be political when I spoke before, and I'm not seeking to be political now. There are mechanisms in place. We've had the fair funding review that has continually been pushed off and been pushed off again. We also have the area cost adjustment. There are ways that could be used. It has been used for the Isle of Scilly. They received a significant uplift through that process. It's not the case that there is no process here, so no mechanism here. And that, as I say, underlines the feelings I expressed quite bluntly earlier.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Whatever views are in this room about the amount of money, and it's clearly not a vast sum, I do think it would help if the council were optimistic about increasing the amount of money next year, rather than seek to be negative about the sum that's received this year. And I know that Chris Ward said it's the first recognition of the cost of separation. It may have been a long time coming, but I think that's significant, and we should be optimistic about increasing the amount for next year and the year after, and so on.
Let's be optimistic. I'll take that as we're all going to work together in terms of optimism. Thank you for that, Councillor Robertson. Agreement that we will work together. I think we're there, aren't we, Councillor Quirk? Yeah, we're in charge. Right, so any further questions on the budget in the last minute remaining? Speak now for every hold your peace. It's going to make the budget meeting very fun. I mean, it's just going to go through on the nod. At this rate, there'll be nothing to talk about. I can't believe that for a minute. Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to items due to be considered by Cabinet. So I'll go through them one at a time, just because if you've got any burning desire to talk about them. Isle of Wight Council, Horsebridge Hill, Traffic Regulation Order number 12021, which I'm sure most of you know off by heart. I know I do. Yeah, it's in deferred Cabinet. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. That item has been deferred from Cabinet.
Perfect. Nice and easily done. Determining school admissions. Any questions or sensible comments rather than statements? None. Well, I thought that would be more controversial by a long way. We're all saving this up for the future, I can see. Outcome of the consultation on the future of Chillerton and Rookley Primary School. Again, sensible questions or statements. Cameron Palin.
Thank you, Chair. As someone who works in education, my focus will always be the pupils and educational life chances of them. This debate over Rookley and Chillerton Primary has gone on far too long, leaving families, pupils, staff and the wider community in limbo. But this school closure will lead to further upset and harm to our young people. Myself and the chair of Chillerton and Gatcombe Parish Council have serious concerns over the way Hampshire County Council officers have dealt with the process, as well as showing no interest in approaching the free school or other academies about forming a MAT. The chairman of Chillerton and Gatcombe Parish Council have emailed all councillors with a whole list of reasons why the school should be saved, including the fact that the Stenbury Federation have purposely reduced pupil numbers by removing a reception class, thus decreasing the chances of new intake, giving them a reason to close the school. If the Alliance is serious about caring about the island and communities of Chillerton, Gatcombe and Rookley, then I urge them to freeze this decision and defer the public notice for closure, to allow yourselves time and the officers to meet with the Island Free School or another academy about forming a MAT, and then bring this decision back. Whilst I acknowledge the local authority and cabinet member have no power over the regional schools commission, your intervention would show the administration are listening and working on the benefit of the community and these young people. Will the cabinet member defer this public notice?
So to confirm the question, where's the question at the end? Will they defer? Okay, who'd like to take that one? Councillor Andre.
Happy to take that, and I'd like to thank Councillor Palin for actually sending some questions in to me in advance, which was very helpful on that. I would like to reassure that this administration absolutely puts the well-being of our young people at the centre, very much so, and we will do everything that we can to ensure that they are provided with a high-quality education. This was one of the first decisions that actually came to me when I came into post as cabinet member. And the information that was presented to me, I was not in a position to make any recommendation at that point. I assured everyone that I would take a measured approach, and that's exactly what I've done. I kept the school open for another year, so I have already delayed the decision, but now is the time to actually give certainty to parents, to the staff, and most importantly, to those children. We went out for a further consultation with 8 options, and the responses that we got back from that consultation gave us a very clear steer. 32%, which was by far the highest proportion, went for the option that we are recommending. I would also like to highlight that the local authority are not the body that actually go to form an extension of a free school, for example, forming a multi-academy trust. That's the Regional Schools Commissioner. So, and I have answered that question already to Councillor Palin, in terms of we have been to the Regional School Commissioner, who has confirmed that they've not been formally approached by any academy or free school in respect of Chillerton and Rookley. As I say, this decision does need to be made, but I would stress that the recommendation that I am putting to Cabinet is the start of the process to amalgamate Chillerton and Rookley with God's Hill through the closure, and there is a set statutory process for this. So what I am recommending is that there is a publication of a public notice which goes out to a further 4-week consultation. So there will be an opportunity for further comments to come in on this. And that's what my recommendation is. So the decision does need to be made, and I hope I have given my reasons why I will not be deferring this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further, Councillor Robson?
Thank you, Chair. The Cabinet member said, before she was the Cabinet member in April last year, we fully support the efforts that are being made to secure the future of the school for generations to come. What's changed since April?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Robertson. What's changed is that I have had an opportunity and time now to fully consider the evidence before me, the evidence that was gleaned from the consultation. And it's clear from that consultation that the recommendation that I am putting to Cabinet is the correct one.
I think in response to Councillor Palin's question, you said you've been persuaded by 32% who responded in broadly the terms that you're now recommending to Cabinet. How is 32% persuasive to close a school?
I think if you take it in context, as I originally said, there were 8 options that were put out there, and the results of that consultation have been made public. So from that, and the comments that were actually associated with that consultation, it wasn't, I must stress, it wasn't a tick box exercise. There was opportunity for comments. I have read every single one of those comments along with that 32%. And that has enabled me to feel confident in making the decision that I've made in making that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. There will be, I'm sure, quite a lot for us to learn from this process, and I think that would be very important. That came back before scrutiny, please. Thank you very much. Any other, Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Andre, if I may just please, so that I've understood the position, are you saying that if the Island Free School were to make an approach in the appropriate way, during the next 4 weeks of consultation, there would still be an option, or are you saying that that option, because they haven't as yet made an approach, is now lost?
As I said before, I can't comment on that because that would be a matter for the Regional Schools Commissioner to decide.
Okay. But if the island takes the decision, as it were, to close, and the Cabinet takes that decision on Thursday, is that reversible if the Island Free School makes an application?
I think the important thing here, as I said, is to give certainty for the future of the pupils and the staff and the parents.
So, just so that I've understood, if the Island Free School were now to make an application, it's too late. Is that what you're saying, for the sake of certainty?
Would it not just then not be an LEA maintained school and it would become a free school? Would that not be the answer? So it'd be a case of talking about buying the land and the property, yeah?
The answer to your question is not within our gift. The answer is what has to happen is that, first of all, so the Island Free School is a freestanding academy. It only has permission to run itself. So in order to extend, it has to apply to, and it must be the free school that applies, not the local authority. The free school must apply to the Regional Schools Commissioner. The Regional Schools Commissioner has a board of head teachers which decide on such applications. They may or may not choose to grant it multi-academy trust status. It would then have to go through a process of applying to take over the Chillerton and Rookley School as part of its multi-academy trust status. So there's a 2-stage process which is in the hands of the Regional Schools Commissioner, not the local authority.
Now, I understand that, but it's probably my fault. What I don't understand is if the Isle of Wight Cabinet has taken a decision that the school will close and will amalgamate with God's Hill, does that not in effect, I don't know. So I ask you the question, does that not in effect mean that any option then of the free school taking over would be unlikely?
All I can say is that the free schools had probably the best part of a year to step forward, and they haven't done so.
They haven't done so?
No.
That wasn't my question, though. So I'm asking you if the decision by Cabinet is irrevocable, or can it be revoked should the free school make an application?
At that stage, the free school, the decision will have been taken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to say that there's still the option on the table, as it were, is not right, which I think is what was being said.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the option is still on the table. The recommendation is before you, but that is to publish the public notice. There is a statutory process here.
I understand. I don't want to take up any more time. I think we've had the answer, but I understand there's a statutory process. And if as part of the statutory process, Cabinet takes a decision tomorrow, on Thursday, that it will close and amalgamate with God's Hill, that then, as it were, prevents, does it not, a subsequent application by the free school. So what I'm asking you is, would it be worth simply postponing the Cabinet decision to see, because there is a strong feeling, as you know, I think, in the community, that the free school is willing, it may not have gone through the correct procedures, but is willing to become involved. So would it be sensible for Cabinet to postpone to see if the free school really wants to make an application? For example, a phone call could be made to the free school tomorrow, could it not?
If I can just reiterate, the free school have had a year, as Steve Crocker said, to make that application, and it is not incumbent upon the local authority to involve them. So it's for the free school to contact the Regional Schools Commissioner. And my team, the Regional Schools Commissioner has confirmed that they have not received any formal application from the free school. So to my mind, we have covered off that option.
Yeah, I'm concerned we're going around in circles. No offence to either party. I'm concerned that I know exactly what you're asking, Councillor Spink, and I also think I understand what the answer is. Can I ask that you probably discuss as the three of you after this meeting so you can clarify, because effectively the free school have got till Thursday, till the Cabinet meeting, if they did want to make an application. If there's any route around that and you know some further information, it might be useful. So if you don't mind, I will move on from that.
Could I just ask another question?
Of course you can.
And that is on the property implications. That's page 30, I think. Let me just check. Property implications, paragraph 50 to 52. There is a covenant, I think, on the land that it can only be used as an educational establishment. Is that correct?
This question has been asked many times, and I'm happy to answer it again. The covenant, in a way, a covenant does exist, but that would not preclude this option from going ahead. Steve, do you want to add to that?
The issue of the covenant, such as it is, has been addressed by our lawyers, and I'll read you the technical response to that if you want me to, but it says that the school land is held in trust by the council. The council closed the property. It can revert to the beneficiaries of the state, the original owner, or the proceeds of any sale could be used to fund the purchase or improvement of alternative school premises. Alternatively, the council can apply to the Charity Commission to set up a scheme for similar charitable purposes which would extinguish the trust. So the monitoring officer and legal services are fully cited and in agreement with this.
That's fairly similar to paragraphs 51 and 52, in fact. What my concern, and I may be wrong, I don't claim to know a lot about trusts, but the school land, the land and the school may well be difficult to sell because of the covenant. And if it is difficult to sell, whose financial liability is it?
Financial liability?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the Isle of Wight Council is the trustee, are they not?
Yes. Yeah.
So if, for example, the Isle of Wight Council takes a decision to close the school, and there is no one wants to buy it, what happens to the school?
We would recycle that within the council's property portfolio. It would become an asset that we would then
for educational purposes. So
potentially, but not.
What another school?
A school isn't just the only educational purpose. There are other educational purposes that we've used for.
Has it been properly thought through this?
Oh, yes.
Okay, the final question I'd like to ask.
Sorry, Councillor, I think your mic's working, Steve.
Oh, big pardon.
Final question I'd like to ask is, in 2017 to 2018, the school had 85 pupils with a capacity of 91. And now it has, in October of 21, I think it is, it had 21 pupils. What happened in those 2 or 3 years to cause its decline? Do you know?
Parents exercise choice about where they choose to send their children to. That's been government policy for quite a long time.
But there is such a thing, rather along the lines of planning blight, there is such a thing of closure blight. Have you investigated why the numbers have dropped? And is it because no parents are going to send their children to a school which is going to close?
We didn't plan to close it in 2017.
No, but I mean, at some point you did intend to close at 21, I think, 20, is that right? Or at least you were considering it was being considered.
It was consulted on last year, but the reason, of course, we were looking at that was the decline in standards. And the most important thing here, from my perspective, is the education of children in the school. They're not getting a broad and rich curriculum because there aren't sufficient children in that school to receive it.
But as Councillor Palin put, a lot of the school has already been transferred, hasn't it, to God's Hill. As I understand it, the preschool section, the reception, year 1, I think, and year 6 has already been transferred, and yet no definite decisions being taken. Is that all adding to the decline of the school? I don't know. I'm just asking you.
I think you'd have to ask parents about their perceptions around that, and that's part of that consultation that we carried out.
There's a presumption against closing a school, isn't there? Matter of law, presumption against.
If
there's a presumption around rural.
Yeah, well, this is a rural school, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to stop the debate, but I think we do tend to go around in circles a little bit. I've got Councillor Lilly and then Cameron Payne to come back in. Sorry to stop you both there, but if you would, Councillor Lilly.
Can I suggest, Chair, as you earlier alluded to, I'm quite happy to meet after this.
Are you happy with that, Councillor? Thank you. Thank you.
To provide any further clarification. Thank you.
Councillor Lilly.
I think to stop us going round in circles, I just want to clarify certain things. The Stenbury Federation, that has both schools, right, made this decision to amalgamate. They wrote, am I correct, to the Isle of Wight Council for their sort of views on it, and you had a year. You decided to do a year. Your decision now is on the welfare of the children, because if you don't say in April what is going to happen, then, and that school is still open, you've basically got a reception class that's got one child in it. Sorry? There isn't a reception class. Well, no, because they would have to. But a school, a primary school, is about having a reception class, year 1 and year 2. So in a way, the council has to make a responsibility on that. That's my question, right?
Okay.
So your decision is about the welfare of those children, which you have to make now in April. Isn't it the responsibility of the Stenbury Federation and the Free School to actually have come in earlier? That's not the responsibility of the Isle of Wight Council. Is that correct?
Yes, and if I can just clarify as well, it's not that the pupils have been transferred to God's Hill. There are still pupils that are on roll at Chillerton and Rookley. But as I said, we have to put the well-being of the children. So to have a reception class of 1 is not providing a rich, broad-based curriculum, balanced curriculum, or it's more importantly at that age, the social experience for that child. And that's why they are attending God's Hill. But during that year, there was an opportunity to actually build up the numbers of the school again. Parents were given that opportunity, as Steve said. Through parental choice, that hasn't happened, and numbers have actually declined further. So it's got to a stage now where the responses from the consultation support the recommendation that is being put forward, and I am confident as Cabinet member that that is the right decision for those children and that community. Thank you.
And briefly, no, that's it. So thank you all for that. That's gone a little bit longer, but it's a very emotive subject. I think it is very important that we get everybody's point of view on that, because there will be, even if there are only 21 pupils there, that's 21 families that will be upset about the decision. So thank you for that explanation. So, quarterly performance monitoring report. Any highlights, anything anybody wants to highlight from the quarterly performance monitoring report? It's a lot of quarterly performance monitoring, so there's a lot to go through. No? Councillor Lee.
I will not disappoint you.
Good.
Councillor Quigley. I think it was page 74. It was 73. I was just looking at the graph, which was the average working days lost to sickness per employee. And as you can see, in the previous year, it's sort of been, it was very high and gone down. I presume that might be linked to COVID at that time. But it's actually been quite low this year, and suddenly in November it sort of spiked up. And I just wondered whether this was to do with COVID or other reasons, right? Isn't that?
Who would like to answer that? Councillor John.
Yes, I'll answer it and I'll pass over to Claire if she wants to add something to it. Yes is the answer, COVID. Clearly, when people are at home, we notice this has been reported very consistently in the quarterly reports for some time and explained in a very similar way. I think partly it's because people who are working at home, if they have a bit of a sniff and a cold or something else, are more likely to carry on working at home than they perhaps would be in the office. And I think it's fairly obvious and a very common theme across industry and business in general that when we see a return to people coming out into the environment and coming back to work, that the number does come back up to its previous norm.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor?
I see if Claire wants to add anything to it.
No, I think you did a perfect job of that, Councillor Jarman. I think that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
John Metcalfe.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I would use that as an opportunity to pay great credit to our staff over this period as well, because not only have they worked from home, their sickness levels have been low, as you've highlighted, Councillor Lilly, but they've taken advice about hands, face, space. They've worked sensibly, they've spread out, and our colleagues in social care have used appropriate PPE. They've taken the training there. So everybody, I think, has been really sensible through this whole period. And we've been very fortunate that we've not had, I'm touch wood at the moment, but we've been very fortunate that we've not lost services due to staff numbers being sick and ill. And I think that's great credit to the staff for the way they've behaved. And I just want to know that from the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, John. No, you can come in a minute. I'll get Karen and then back to you. Councillor Lucioni.
Hello. No, I'm new to reading all these reports, etc. But I just wanted to talk about our child protection. And obviously the pandemic has seen an upturn in that. We all kind of know about that, and it's been in the media. But then when we look at the failure to identify and effectively manage the situations, how we're still on amber, so how are we going to get to green and look after all our children?
Who'd like to take that one? Page 90.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Councillor Lucioni. As I'm sure many people in this chamber will know, we've come on quite a journey in terms of our child protection. We are driving forward. We are confident that all children are as safe as they can possibly be. But it will never be 100%, but we are working towards green. We are constantly looking at our practices, and we have transformation plan. We've got the Hampshire and Isle of Wight approach, which we are embedding, which is ensuring that we have the right people in the right place. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Thank you. It's to do with the way the risk register is constructed. And in terms of child protection, I don't believe we can get to green because of the inherent risks around child protection. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means that we have to be constantly paying attention to it, constantly guarding against this, and constantly working hard. But it is the way that the risk management matrix is constructed in this particular case.
Is that adult social care had done a bit on safeguarding is everybody's responsibility. Can we do the same thing for children's?
Can I just reassure you, interestingly enough, I was at two schools this morning, two primary schools, and inevitably the issue of safeguarding came up. And I can assure you that safeguarding is everybody's responsibility was something that was actually said and is embedded across our practices. And I can see Councillor Palin nodding. So it is already embedded very much in our practices. And it's also, every school has a governing board with a safeguarding link governor. So there is oversight as well. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Councillor Joe.
Thank you. I don't know if it's opposite to the debate we're having now, but I was just wondering if the officer could provide potentially a little bit of background about some of the challenges which the island faces in terms of safeguarding. If there's anything specifically about our situation economically, geographically, which is something we need to overcome, just as a personal matter of interest. Thank you.
I'm happy to. The island is, in this regard, not unique. There are challenges in every town, every village, every city with regards to safeguarding children. I would really commend to all members to look at the annual Isle of Wight Safeguarding Children's Partnership annual report. It's got a lot of really useful information in there, but one of the points that it does stress is the partnership nature of the response. So it's us, the police, the NHS, schools working together to try to safeguard children. There are a couple of major themes around nationally. Obviously, those are children under 1, and mostly those children aren't known to children's services until there is a problem. And then there are also themes around teenagers and gangs and violence and exploitation. Those things happen everywhere. We've got very, very good systems in place for that. But I would commend you read out the Partnership's annual report, and that will give you a lot more information. And I'd be really happy to pick up any questions from that, probably more than I could do in this meeting.
Thanks, Steve. If you'll allow me just to add to that, during the pandemic, there were schools especially really did step up to the plate with that. I was involved with a school on the island at the time as a governor, and they actually produced a COVID-19 addendum to the safeguarding policy that I had oversight of. And I am aware of just about every school, I think, on the island where they were actually going out and checking on pupils going over and above to ensure that safeguarding was a priority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Drew. Councillor Lilly, back to you.
Thank you. I've got a supplementary and a completely different question. The supplement into my original question was, do we look at other authorities and do we sort of measure, for instance, our sickness, compared to other authorities? I'm just saying, is our level, really good compared to other authorities? So that was my supplementary question, and then I've got another question that I would like to put to Councillor Andre.
Chairman, if I may respond to Councillor Lilly's question with regard to benchmarking. Yes, we do comparator work that enables us to review how well we're doing against other local authorities. Of course, like anything, that has to be treated with some degree of caution because every organisation is different. But in comparison to others, we fare well.
And your other question, Councillor Lilly?
Well, it was, I was looking at the education and the quarterly performance, and I'm completely baffled that why has the government listed us as a cold spot, which has obviously been announced of that. I can't see it, and I would like to know how they have come to that conclusion. Are they looking at things differently? I was just surprised that we were put in that 55 category. I mean, it's something that hopefully your Children's Scrutiny Committee can actually look at in more detail, because I think but just an initial reaction to that would be grateful.
Councillor Andre?
As I think other colleagues have said, there's an awful lot in that paper. It's not a single issue and we are working through it. So I'm not in a position at the moment to comment on that, but you can be assured that that is something that I am going through with a fine tooth comb. But as I say, it's multifaceted. It will not be down to a single issue.
Is it possible, Chair, that could be perhaps put onto your agenda of your next?
If it's not already on, yes, it will. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. One thing possibly to look at in the quarter performance monitoring report, because unfortunately you get what you measure, and I'm sorry to give you extra work, is things like statutory requirements, such as measuring the speed of response to freedom of information requests, which I know is not very exciting. But is it worth us looking at it? And this is a question rather than an insistence. Is it worth us measuring that so we know where we are in terms of performance of that? So unfortunately, that's it's already on there, is it?
Jim, we already do an annual report on complaints and performance on that, which covers FOIs, local government ombudsman complaints, and other things along those lines. We could do something intermediary if that would help.
It's not doing double the workload. If it's already there, then yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Moving on then. Once a year, I would think, annually.
I think we saw it 2 meetings ago, from recollection serves me right, but I can direct you to it, Councillor.
I think it was about 2 meetings ago, so we have had it, yeah.
Moving on to the forward plan. Has anybody seen that they would like to bring to early notice of corporate scrutiny that is in the forward plan that would give us early sight would be good? It's a bit of a difficult question, though. Those members of the committee, would it do us good to meet face to face, perhaps, to have a discussion about what we think might be worth? It needs to be of interest to members, really, and I think we could probably have a really good discussion, even if there's only 2 or 3 things to really. So if we can sort something out there, Paul, that might be better. That might get us. Unless anyone has got anything to mention on there. No. Work plan then. Any amendments required to the committee's future work plan? Yeah, I mean, again, we can include that in the face-to-face to save you rifling through. Councillor Spink.
I hope this will be considered that it's applicable, as it were, to the item 9 work plan on the agenda, and that is this, that I understand that an extraordinary or an additional meeting of corporate scrutiny is to take place on the 12th of April, and that is specifically to consider the draft island planning strategy before it goes to consultation, or at least before it goes to cabinet and then to consultation. Councillor Lilly, do you want to?
No, I'm just trying to get my...
Yeah, I've got
attention.
You carry on, Councillor Spink.
I thought perhaps you wanted to
Councillor Lilly will always make sure he's heard.
Again already. Good. So may we know, please, when the draft plan will be served on corporate scrutiny? Because it's not the sort of thing, if corporate scrutiny is to have meaningful scrutiny of the draft plan, it's not the sort of thing that can be served on us 3 or 4 days before the corporate scrutiny meeting. So when will it be served, please?
John?
Thank you, Chairman. That paper requires to go to corporate scrutiny, cabinet and onto full council. Current intention is that we publish the paper for all 3 meetings on the same day. So that would effectively be the pre-publication period for scrutiny would be the start for the publication of that paper. So scrutiny would get its papers within the ordinary working time from the summons of the meeting.
Which is, what was that, 8 days?
I think it's about the 4th of April.
6 days.
Something, we'd be publishing it, it's 5 working days, isn't it?
5 working days. I mean,
as a minimum.
Query, frankly, whether that's sufficient. 5 working days. We're not all just doing nothing but considering the draft plan for 5 days. And 5 days, I mean, it's a 250-page document, plus the devil is in the detail. One needs to read all of the supporting papers. In addition, we've still not yet received the report on the task and finish groups report, which was said would be published once there is a council's advice has been taken. Has that now been taken, and is that report ready to be published?
Councillor Fuller?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the notice of the question. I spoke to officers earlier on, and they are still working with the QC on the paperwork. So that information is still under consideration as far as I'm concerned. The timescales are very, very tight because it is the administration's queue to try to get things done as swiftly as we possibly can. But I do consider that Councillor Spink's views about the level of consultation is very relevant, and I think that this is a very important document. It needs to be properly considered, and anything that we can do to try to fast track that, and I'm thinking off the top of my head, we will try to do. But again, it is an ambition. We have to work within the constitution of the council, and I am trying to do as much as I can to try to get that information out as quickly as we possibly can, as I always do. Thank you.
It's not, you're right, 5 days is not ideal. I totally agree. I don't know, and it's not fair, I don't think, to say how can we speed that up, but I do agree 5 days isn't going to be ideal. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. It sort of linked to the work plan, but it was something from the forward plan that I wanted to raise.
You're too late. You're too late. Okay.
No, you move very quickly. It is important, I think. The Isle of Wight dementia strategy, and which is a really important issue to any community, but it's very important to this community. We have a significant dementia community with families and carers. So the strategy is very important. Unfortunately, the cabinet meeting is the 10th of March. I'm not sure, Mr. Thistlewood might say, whether there is a health and scrutiny meeting just before that.
March.
It's on the 14th of March. Well, it sort of, it falls after that. And I do think that, in a sense, the Cabinet would have already approved it. And I do think there needs to go through some kind of scrutiny. Whether we can actually have it at our next scrutiny meeting of that, it should go to the health one. There's always been a problem with the dates on these things.
So your recommendation is that we put
But we
that on
do
the-
need
the
scrutiny. We do need scrutiny of that strategy.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
It will come to this committee by normal course if it's on the Cabinet, Chairman.
Okay.
Perhaps there could be a discussion, Chair, with you and the Chair of Health and, health scrutiny in that regard.
That's something that we'll have to make a note for me to speak to John, Councillor Nicholson, if you would. That's a fair point, Kaz. If you'd like to address any concerns, you'd like to send them to me, I'll address them directly with Councillor
But I
Nicholson.
think we've got to talk about it in scrutiny in some form before that Cabinet meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else on the, we've got work plan, we've done the forward plan. Anything else on the work plan? We'll include that in our meeting as well, because I think in that we need to, we've got some gaps, I think, in the work plan. And I think we need to get some things in there that are of interest to members so that we can really get going. So with that in mind, any members' questions at all? No, we can't let me get away with that this easy on my first one. Surely not. No? Excellent. Well, thank you all for, you asked too many. You did very well tonight, Councillor Lilly. I was not too bad. So thank you all for your attendance. If I've done it right, I've upset all of you. So have a pleasant evening. You get away early. Thank you very much.